All right. Well, Christy, welcome to Dragonfly Insights. It's so great to see you again. And thank you so much for taking your time to join us. I have a few questions for you. And I know you have some really amazing answers because I know that you are all about data and all about recovery and all about telling salespeople to really sell. So my first question is, describe your outlook for 22 to 23 to 24, because I know you just released a new forecast.
We did, and the outlook is actually very good. We took a significant uptake in the forecast at the end of Q2 because the Q2 performance was so strong. Little minor increase. We only went up about a point from Q2 to Q3, but the market actually still outperformed our forecast by 5%. And I was actually a little anxious that my forecast might have been too aggressive. Even though we outperformed it by 23% in Q2 and only 5% in Q3, that is on top of a very aggressive move up in the forecast. Other really good thing, and what makes me certain that recovery is here to stay, is in September, which is always a little bit of an iffy month from a meetings perspective, depending on where the Labor Day holiday falls and the Jewish holidays and all of that. But we actually were at 89.5% recovered to 2019 levels. It is the highest that we've seen since all of this mess started. And we've actually been above 80% since June. So I do actually think November will get above that 90%. So we did raise the forecast for the remainder of the year, 73.6% recovered. And we're actually looking at growth for 2023 now, not another recovery year. And most markets will get to 100% pretty early in the year, right around the May point. Got a couple that are a little later. And then by 2024, it's just back to business as normal at 120% of 2019 levels. So I'm in a very good spirits about how we're going to recover.
Awesome. Great news. Great news. My next question is, has the booking window changed for group? And if so, how has it changed? And do you anticipate that continuing?
So for the longest, it had shortened dramatically. And anecdotally, we would talk to hotels and you'd hear the stories that actually kind of make your heart stop for a hot second, where it's like, oh yeah, someone called yesterday to book a 200-person event in 22 days. And I'm just thinking of the logistics of pulling all of that off, not so much as the hotel, but as the meeting planner being able to logistics of pulling all that together. We're hearing fewer of those stories, which is a good thing. The other thing that's probably causing that is hotels are starting to get busier again, and meeting planners are calling and they suddenly can't find the space. So natively, they're training themselves to start shopping a little bit further out. So that, I think we're going to see that into next year as well. But as you start hitting more compression on key dates, the meeting planners will natively start to move a little further out.
That's great. That brings so much more stability to our ability to forecast and the ability to prepare for those groups coming. So that's really great news as well.
Absolutely.
What segments of corporate are fully recovered right now, or doing better than 2019, and what are the laggards?
So corporate is obviously, I mean, it's the lion's share of the business out there. You've got a handful of segments: online retail, tobacco of all things, aerospace, which sort of makes sense with the space race that everyone's going through right now. Those are the ones that are recovering and either at or frighteningly close to being fully recovered. Sports and entertainment, urban infrastructure, construction. But where we're actually seeing the laggards are in the ones that make up the lion's share of that corporate bucket. So training and education is still only sitting at about 42% recovered. Some markets are doing slightly better, but in the US as a whole, technology is in that. Oddly, healthcare has fallen back just a little bit. Sort of makes sense because you don't have as many traveling nursing teams going around. Things have stabilized, staffing inside of hospitals. But even those, they're at above, other than training and education, even the ones that are in the laggard, they're at about 62% percent recovered, so they're going to get there. The only one that sort of that makes me anxious in that is the technology segment. I'm not 100% certain that it's ever going to get back to those levels, because you're talking about people who are perfectly comfortable sitting in front of a computer, not being on a video. They'll talk to you all day long, but they don't necessarily need to be in a meeting, and they're also already versed with using all of the technology that allows them to virtually meet. I mean, I work with my team, the product team and the development team. We were the ones that when we had to go home, we're all like, yes, we're never coming back. And I think that's going to impact that sector for a significant amount of time. Even some of the moves that you're seeing with a lot of these companies saying, yep, we're just going to let our people stay virtual. Where I think that we'll see a tipping point is probably latter part of next year, as they start bringing those people that moved away in to have meetings. Now, whether that's all going to a low centralized location, or if they do multiple meetings in different places so people don't have to travel as far as a cost cutting measure, that I don't know yet. But that's the one segment that, if I had to say, sort of keeps me up at night, is that one. I don't know that it's ever going to get back to that. So if that's something that you depended on, you're going to have to find some alternate segments to get out there and do it.
So you think training and education will come back, even though a lot of companies, were very hard pressed the last couple of years to transform 100% of their training to online? So you see that segment returning, or did that give you any heartburn?
I think we will, because we've actually seen, as bad as it is, it's double what it was in Q1. So it's coming back. It's just coming back slower. And I think there's going to be a point where they need to say, if you have a product launch, it's going to be very difficult to do that virtually. You're going to need that hands-on experience in a single place. And then you're going to have the companies that went fully remote, and they're going to want to bring people in to do training and have that cultural experience. So we'll get back to it. It's just going to be in the laggard column for a while.
Got it. Thank you. Yeah. So another question for you. How do you think that the employee shortage that we're having in hospitality is going to impact the servicing of groups and the ability to have those larger banquet events and that type of thing? And do you see that challenge impacting us at all, or dampening our ability to bring big groups back because we just can't hire people?
I think if you had asked me this question 6 months ago, I would have had a moderately different answer. Now that the booking window is starting to expand, I'm less anxious about it. I think there was a problem when you had a 200-person event booking within 30 days. But it wouldn't have just been limited to staffing perspective. It would have been limited to supply chain shortages, and can you even get the menu that they want? But I think with everything lengthening a little bit and being able to provide a little bit more stability in the forecasting component of it and what staffing they're going to need, it's going to make that a little bit easier. Where I think we're going to have trade-offs, however, is inside of that. Someone calls on Monday to book grandma and grandpa's 75th wedding anniversary, and they want to do it at the hotel and have a little dinner. In the past, you would have been like, no big deal. We already have the staffing here to do that. Now you may not have that staffing to do that. Or it's the difference between putting John, who is the head server for that, into his 14th day working, and that was scheduled to be his day off. It may be that John makes that conscious decision, but at what point do you begin to burn out employees if you're insisting? So it's going to, I think, impact more for a while the short-term last minute booking, where you can't automatically assume that you would have had staffing available like you could have 3 years ago. That's, I think, going to ultimately stabilize out, especially as we get, it's that being able to additionally forecast and say, okay, we're going to have 4 weddings on the second Saturday in April, just like we've always had, and we've got to have the staffing for that. Once we get back to that, it worries me less. One thing I would caution hotels on is being very upfront with their planners to say, oh, okay, look, our full menu is not available. We have different menus. This is what I personally recommend so that your team has the best experience based upon what's functionally available. And I know good hotels have already gone through that and looked through what can I get reliably through supply chain versus what I can't functionally get, and making sure that their meeting planners are aware, or whomever they're dealing with is aware of those types of things. So just being very upfront in that personalization and making sure you're putting that best foot forward.
So Christy, if you were a salesperson today at a big group hotel, let's say, who used to have a lot of technology groups coming, where would you hunt? Like, what are the segments that are growing, are exponentially recovering? Like, where would you go hunt for business to replace those technology groups?
Well, I don't like to do a commercial, but I would recommend that you use the Nolan platform to go in and see what's actually out there, and then match that up to an industry segment, because chances are, if inside one segment, there are other things in there. And the best example I have of that is during the first summer out of COVID, we were working with some hotels down in Austin, and these hotels, their meeting space was full almost every day. And this is phenomenal. And what they discovered is law firms they still had to have depositions, and they didn't want to bring these people into their offices and risk putting their employees, so they were renting meeting rooms to do these depositions. So it was limited to the attorneys, maybe the client, the opposing counsel attorneys, and their client. It was 7 or 8 people, or 10 or 12, versus bringing them into their 100-person law office and risking exposing everybody. And they just went around and started calling all of these law offices. So on any given day, they had 15 or 20 depositions going on. And then they pivoted on that and started hitting accounting firms that had to bring people in to learn new tax code in preparation for the coming year. It was just finding those little niches, because if one vertical is booking, there are going to be 20 other companies within that vertical that are also booking. So making sure that you truly understand what's going on in your market, and then hunting inside of that, whether it's those companies or comparable companies. Because guess what? It's out there. Construction is going insane. Find those construction companies. Urban infrastructure, you've got so many states. I live in one of those states where we have a little bit of a electricity hot mess of a nightmare going on, and you've got all this urban infrastructure coming in trying to upgrade our grid so that we, the winter doesn't kill us the next time a bad storm hits us. So finding all of those and doing that. But here's the catch. You actually have to get out there and hunt. It's probably not going to drop in your lap in an RFP. You've got to go out and start knocking on the doors, dialing for dollars, all of that fun stuff. I'm old enough to have done it when I was working in hotels, and you got in your car and you drove around and you looked at signs. It's harder to do that now because you can't always get into buildings, but you can certainly write that company's name down, get back to your office and do the research and find someone. And that's just good selling. Waiting for it to drop in your lap from an RFP it's a recipe for failure. And the thing I will add for everyone is, prior to COVID, the average RFP went to 5 to 7 hotels. They're now going to 20 to 25 hotels. So you're not competing against your comp set. You're now competing against a broader market, and maybe even multiple markets. So you really have to do your best. You have to go hunt your own business and have a different process altogether for your RFPs.
Great advice. Thank you. Last question.
Yes.
What is the one piece of advice you would give to the sales teams at hotels? What can they do that's going to make a difference?
I probably just hit on that and gave that one away. Selling. It's getting out there. And I don't want to say that I'm down on RFPs. I don't believe that RFPs should be the entire process. Have a designated person that manages the influx of RFPs that you're getting, and they only move on to a salesperson if they truly turn out to be good qualified ones. The other thing that I would do is making sure when you've got those meetings and you do that follow-up phone call to say, hey, Carol, how did the meeting go? I talked to the people on site and it seemed to go well. Oh yeah, it went well. We had this one little hiccup. Get that honest feedback, but then ask the next question. Not just when's your next meeting. Are there other people in your organization that plan meetings? What does that
Mhm.
look like?
Mhm.
You have to understand and know these customers. And we used to do it as an industry. My best leads were leads that I got from someone I just planned a meeting with. And they said, oh, Susie over in that division plans a meeting as well. Give her a call. I'll do an introduction for you, kind of thing. That's the thing
Mhm.
that we truly need to be out there hunting, because if we can fill our own pipeline, then you just use the RFPs to fill in the gaps. And they should not be our primary source of business. They should be the things that we're filling in when we suddenly have a hole.
Yep. Great advice. Awesome. Well, I think we're about done.